Hello everybody, I'm Ursula, I make comics, and last week I challenged our viewers to fix an old comic page of mine that I did not like the composition and text bubble placement, and I threw it to our community and I told them fix it, and they did amazing. So today I'm going to go through all of the entries and choose a winner, and we're going to be showing off that winner's creative project / comic. But before I get into that, I want to issue the challenge for next week. For next week, I'm feeling kind of silly. My birthday's coming up this weekend, so I thought I'd issue a really fun challenge. I want you to make a single page, no dialogue comic of someone making their breakfast. They get all their breakfast made, they set it on the table, but right before they're about to eat, they turn away to grab their coffee or drink or utensils, something, and when they return, they find their pet has stolen their breakfast. Now, like I said, I just want a single page. I don't want any dialogue. I want you to focus on telling this tiny little story just through facial expressions, through your composition, through the actions of what's going on. And this can be a simple sketch or a thumbnail. I would just focus on being really clear with what you're drawing rather than making it super duper pretty. Again, I want a focus on storytelling without dialogue. And also, I want you guys to use your OCs. Use your original characters, or just a random character if you're not someone who really has OCs. But I want to see them for my birthday. I want to see all your cute OCs. I know you people have them, so draw them making their breckies. So hopefully that one's fun. If you are interested in drawing this or joining the challenge for this week, jump in the Discord. There should be a link in the description, and there is a Discord channel called Challenges, and you can drop your submissions in there. And next week, I will go through all of the entries and choose a winner, and that winner will have their comic promoted on the channel. So without further ado, let's go over this week's challenge and see who won. As always, links for everyone will be in the description. Make sure to give them some love and check out their work. So like I said, I challenged everyone to redesign, recompose an old comic page from our comic The Magpie. The interesting thing about this comic page is that it features an elder god, and she bends reality and breaks the panels and can mess everything up just with her being there. I thought that would be an interesting challenge, and everyone delivered amazing stuff. I mainly wanted everyone to focus on making sure that the composition was fixed. I found that the way I had drawn it, everything was very cluttered. It felt very compressed at the bottom, and I found that the text that I laid out was just laid out kind of awkwardly in like these straight lines. I feel like it could have a lot more flow, so that is what I tasked everyone with fixing. So let's go into what everyone did. So first we have Perroki. I really like this one. I really love the way that they made the Magpie, the Elder God, manipulate the actual panel borders and gutters, like literally, instead of just like, making cool shapes and stuff, which is typically how I've done it. I really like how they've made the Magpie like pull at the borders like they're strings, and having the panel like break the cane instead of using the Magpie's hands. I think that's just a really cool idea that makes her feel like this big, overwhelming presence that controls everything. Such a cool idea, and really well laid out overall. I really like what they did with the bottom two panels. I think that's a really great fix from what it was. The only issue I have with this page is that it's very halved down the middle. It's partly because of the Magpie's eyes kind of stacked on top of each other in the middle, and then the last two panels being broken right down the middle. It just it feels too symmetrical, and it breaks things up in a kind of unbalanced way. But I loved the concept, and otherwise the composition in this one was great. Next we have Justin X Crafter. So I thought the action in this one was really great. It has so much impact, and I really like the composition of those last two panels. Well, the last three panels, I should say. They work really, really well together. They feel very balanced. There's good flow with them. My only real issue with this page is that the top panel feels very unbalanced compared to all that dense action in the last three. There's so much impact there, and things just feel a little flat in that top panel. So I think if that was made a little bit more robust, it had a little bit more oomph. It doesn't need action, obviously, but it just feels unbalanced compared to the other panels. But great work. Next we have Matt. So I thought this one was really thoughtful. I love adding the eyes to the borders of panels to imply like the magpie is watching from everywhere. And I really love how they fixed a lot of the original composition issues by creating more kind of like interlocked dynamic panels. There's almost this like crisscross between like the shape of the panel and where the characters are laid out in the panel. If you follow like Dennis's shoulders, they crisscross with like the panel borders and stuff, and it just makes it feel very dynamic and it has a lot of motion in it and a lot of impact. And the last panel where Magpie's claw is like crushing the cane, there's just so much like oomph to it. Really, really great stuff in this. I really liked how a lot of this was laid out. The only issue I have is a little flow issue where my eye jumps from panel 1 to panel 3 because of the speech bubble in panel 3, what Dennis is saying. I think that speech bubble just needed to be moved somewhere else, or panel 2 needed to be moved into the middle of the composition a little bit more, not too much, because I think that would throw off the balance, but it feels a little too squished in the corner, and it was easy to kind of pass by it and look to panel 3 instead. But like I said, this one was really high up there on my list. I really, really liked it. Great work. Next we have Hellcat Chaos. This one was another one that was really high up on my list. I love the movement in this page. The description of like where the camera is going, where we start off like looking down at Dennis from Magpie's point of view to feel very like imposing, and then we follow him as he falls. I thought that was just really thoughtful, really well done, and I really, really love the way the text was broken up in this one. I love how like Dennis's fall, his impact on the ground breaks up Magpie saying predicament, and it really like highlights that pause in the dialogue. I thought that was really, really well done. My only issue is that it feels a little too condensed at the bottom. And I understand why that can happen because of there is this like downward falling motion. And I know this one was also supposed to follow like the golden ratio, that spiral. But I think instead of everything being pulled to like the center of that spiral, the bottom got kind of squished down. But otherwise, this is so strong. I love the movement. I love a lot of the text placement. Really, really great work. You should be really proud of this one. Next we have Demonic Corvet. So this one was really interesting because they kept it very close to the original, which is totally fine. And I really liked how they focused on like the movements of the characters and the speech bubbles to really fix that flow. I also think that the top panel is really strong. I really like how imposing the magpie feels by making Dennis like smaller. I think that was a really great change to it. And I also think that they fixed panel 3 really, really well so that the text isn't all in one line. The text has been shifted into a much better flow, like a much easier way to read through it all. It looks a lot better. The only thing is that I think in panel 3, while the text was really fixed, I think like the cane and Dennis's arm were pushed a little too close to the edge of the panel. They get kind of lost in there. The same thing kind of happens with the last dialogue piece from the magpie. It just feels like very pushed to the ground, and it feels like a lot of the stuff got kind of magnetized to the bottom of the page. Whereas I think if things were brought in a little and it kind of pushed along that line of flow as you're reading through, I think this would be just a little bit stronger. But this was great work and a really awesome entry. Next we have Not Your Changeling. So I think with this one, there's a really nice flow going on. It's very easy to go from one panel to the next. I think there's a very good sense of like flow and composition. And I also really like the focus on expression and the very like antagonistic back and forth between Dennis and the magpie. The issue I'm finding with this one though is that every panel feels disconnected, like storytelling wise, like there's flow between the panels. Like I think there's a good like innate sense of flow, but each panel feels like its own illustration instead of feeling like part of a sequential piece, if that makes sense. I think it just needed some stronger grounding in the background and like and possibly less close-ups. It's hard to say, but just things feel very disconnected, and I think if they were aligned a little bit more so it felt more sequential, I think that really would have brought it up. But great work. Next we have Tadpole Punch. This one was another one that was really high up on my list. This one is so good. They mentioned in their notes that they got feedback from friends to make sure that everything was reading in the right order, because they went for like a completely borderless look, like no panel borders, I mean. And it really worked. Like, I think the feedback that they got really worked out because it is so easy to read. The flow on it is really great. You can go between the dialogue and the characters and the movement, and it just reads in a very nice, like, little snaky line through it. The only thing that dings it is that the last panel, if you're following the flow of everything, the last panel ends with Magpie's claw like crushing the cane. It's on like the wrong side of the page. If I'm reading a comic page, I want to end on the right side of the page, so then I'd go to the next one, whereas this one is leaving me on the left. I mean, there's some movement and stuff. I just think it would be a little stronger if I ended that line of flow on the bottom right instead of the bottom left. If this was a scrolling comic, I think it would really work, but just something to be mindful when you're working in page format. But this was a really strong contender. This one was up there for me. Thank you for submitting. Next we have Derelict Achilles Dumbass. The username will never not be funny, you know? So first, I really like how in this like thumbnail sketch, everything is very legible. It has a very legible silhouette, which makes things very easy to read if you were to take this and fill it out and make it like a more completed page. I think even then at a glance, it would be really easy to read what is happening. And I really love the last panel especially. It's very powerful seeing the cane snap like just out of Dennis's reach. And I really like how his hand breaks up that last speech bubble. It just fits in there really, really nicely. The only issue I have with this page is that there is a problem with the flow. My eyes go from Dennis in panel 1 to where it says about my predicament in panel 3, and I miss panel 2. My eyes go past it. I think in this case it is just the placement of the panel border where it's that kind of downward diagonal line. It creates like a direct line to the dialogue of panel 3, and as a comic reader I want to go to the dialogue. That's what I will usually follow first. So I think it would just take that panel line being moved, maybe that piece of dialogue being moved away from that line, because that is breaking up the flow, but otherwise this one was so good. Next we have Cinti. This one I thought was a really cool composition. I love the switch to a more vertical format. It does create the illusion of like falling with Dennis, which is awesome. And I think honestly the panel placement in this is my favorite. It really fixes the piece, whereas in my version everything was very squished at the bottom, but with this I really like the flow of panel 1 leading you up to the next like column of panels, and I really enjoy the last two panels that are very similar in how Dennis is placed. The only big difference is the camera's pulled away a little bit and we see the snapping of the cane. It just shows how fast that movement is, and I think it's very strong. The only thing that really pulled this from first place for me was that the text placement feels out of the way. It feels kind of like pushed to the corner, not the corners, but like the tops of panels or bottoms of panels. And it's all kind of stuck in horizontal lines instead of following that downward momentum that you have with like those vertical composition panels. I think if the text had just been shuffled around a little bit to make it flow a little better, this definitely would have been first place. But really, really strong entry with this one. Next we have Bamboo Stalks. The flow in this one is amazing. It's really fantastic. I like how thoughtful they were about how the text is placed and how the panel layout pulls the reader through, really focused on good flow. And I especially love panel 3. I love how Magpie's like arm is like ripping through the panel border. I thought that was a really cool way to play with like the Elder God messing with the panels and like ripping them apart. There's just so much movement and emotion. It's really cool. And I also like there's this subtle touch of how as we go through the panels, Dennis gets like a little bit bigger as we get closer on him. I thought that was also a really cool storytelling touch. The only thing that wasn't really working for me was I think the typography could have been tightened up. I found some of the text being rotated this way and that felt a little hard to read. It didn't feel like it fit with the flow as much. It kind of broke it up. Especially in panel 2, I noticed that some of the lines were just like very straight and not really integrated as well as they could have been into the image. So I think if that had just been adjusted a little bit and tightened up, this would have been like a really strong contender up there. But great work. I really love the flow of this one. It's really cool. And finally, we have our winner, and that is Rat. So this one I thought had really great, like, almost kinetic motion to it. I think it's because of the flow of the panels, how they kind of like bounce off each other, as well as the dialogue bubbles. It really just pulls you through in this very fluid way. And I like as well how it's not completely like cut into each panel. I really like how in panel 3, Dennis is like reaching for the cane, and in panel 4, Magpie is crushing it, but they feel like one panel. But because of how the flow brings you through, you see Dennis first and then you see the cane being crushed. It just brings it together. It makes it feel really like, it feels like an interruption almost, and it feels very abrupt in like a really good way. Like where it feels like, oh no. Yeah, just mixing those panels together in a really impactful way. It was really cool. And I just thought this one was neat. But yeah, really strong flow. Great composition in this one. I liked it. So there you go, Rat. You have won. Congratulations. Thank you so much for submitting. And now you must all go down to the comments and congratulate Rat. And then you gotta go back up a little bit and click on the YouTube link with Rat's name, because they currently don't have a comic, but they made this animatic and it's awesome. I think it turned out really well. You should all go watch it, give it views, give it likes and comments, and as well as check out all of the other participants, because everyone did so good and I'm so proud of everyone. But congrats, Rat, you're the winner. Everyone check out their animatic. And that is it for today. Thank you all so much for watching. Thank you to our participants. And if you are interested in joining next week's challenge and having your comic or project or social media promoted at the end of the video, then hop in the Discord, link in the description, and join in the challenges channel. I'll see you guys later. Goodbye!